Rebuilding the Jewel of the Alliance would take a monumental effort. The nobles of Stormwind gathered and hired a small army of workers called the Stonemasons Guild, led by lead architect Edwin Van Cleef. People traveled from all over the kingdoms with their families to start anew and rebuild the city. This humongous undertaking to rebuild Stormwind marked a new beginning for many. Finally, the humans could focus on rebuilding their lives instead of worrying about 7-foot-tall roided-up green monsters breaking down their door and throwing axes in their face. Hey, get back to work. This city isn't gonna build itself. Job's done. And voila, the city was rebuilt and was just as, if not more beautiful than before. Edwin Van Cleef and his hard-working stonemasons ventured to the keep to claim their promised rewards and... My apologies, but we have decided that we are not going to pay you. What? The nobles decided that they'd just not pay the stonemasons for their years of work. They expressed that they should have rebuilt Stormwind out of civic pride instead. Even though civic pride had no way of putting food on the table for your family. The reality of the situation was that the Stormwind nobles were undergoing a serious debt. Stormwind's military was expanded deep into places across the Eastern Kingdoms like Hillsbrad Foothills and Stranglethorn. I mean, just look at these guys. There has to be like a dozen of them. Maybe. Look, point is, the nobles have been spending a lot of money and can't spare any coin for the stonemasons. While this might be an embarrassing
blood and thunder,
royalty, for one particular noblewoman, everything was going according to plan. Lady Katrina Prestor had deceived the nobles and stonemasons alike. She was secretly the Black Dragon Onyxia.
We all have our disguises.
The daughter of Deathwing manipulated as much chaos as possible among Stormwind with her treachery. She whispered in the ears of the stonemasons, telling them that they needed to ask for more gold, while also telling the nobles they needed to pay them less for their shoddy craftsmanship. I mean, just look at those logs. That can't be safe. And look here. Where the hell are the safety railings? And look up here. Where even are the textures for the top of the castle? And look at this lion. There's like 5 polygons used for this thing. And lastly, why the hell is there a Brewfest wreath here? It isn't even October.
Humans so love their holidays. I mean, of course we do.
And yes, that massive debt the kingdom had racked up was also attributed to Katrina Prestor. The stonemasons were reasonably pissed and protested outside of the castle. In an effort to quell this outrage, the nobles disbanded the Stonemasons Guild, hoping that would make their problem go away. Unsurprisingly, it only made it far worse.
Stone by stone, Stormwind shall fall. To battle!
The stonemasons rioted in the streets, wreaking havoc and destroying the very city they built with their own hands. The nobles needed to think quick, or their precious kingdom would turn to rubble once again. Now you see, some nobles actually wanted to fight for the stonemasons' rights and ensure that they were properly paid. Queen Tiffin Wrynn, wife of Varian Wrynn, was one of these nobles. If anyone was going to quell this outrage, it would be her. Attention, citizens of Stormwind. I, your queen, ask that you please... Queen Tiffin Wrynn was struck by a rock, killing her instantly. Yes, that actually happened in the lore. King Varian was absolutely pissed at the stonemasons and cracked down hard on the hooligans who were responsible for the murder of his own wife. In fear of being thrown in a cell for the rest of their lives, all of the rioting stonemasons fled from Stormwind, the very city they had built with their own hands. Now imagine for a moment, you are a stonemason. You traveled with your family across the continent to help rebuild Stormwind. You spent years of your life performing back-breaking labor to make a lovingly crafted city that was the jewel of the Alliance, as they said, only to be banished from it and forced to watch as the nobles live their happy lives in their castle that you had built. To say the stonemasons were filled to the brim with spite would be an understatement. And their leader, Edwin Van Cleef, was no exception. You see, Edwin was not just some guy who knew how to make pretty castles. He had an extensive history and was even childhood friends with Matthias Shaw, leader of the SI-7, and was trained in the art of being a rogue. The beaten-down stonemasons looked up to him for answers on what to do next. Van Cleef assured them that they would get their revenge. The stonemasons donned crimson bandanas, a stark contrast to the royal blue of the Alliance that had failed them. They were renamed to the Defias Brotherhood, and would stop at nothing to claim their promised payment by any means necessary.
The nobles of Stormwind will pay.
First things first, this newly established criminal organization would need a base of operations. The rundown town of Moonbrook seemed like the perfect location.
This is our town, scrub.
Yeah, beat it.
With Moonbrook taken over, the Defias could claim what they were really after. Beneath the town was the abandoned and haunted mineshaft called the Dead Mines. The gold harvested from this maze of tunnel systems once accounted for a third of Stormwind's treasure reserves. In an ironic twist of fate, the Defias now claimed it as their own. The Dead Mines has been a location in the Warcraft universe ever since the first Warcraft game, when the Orcs took over the mines during the First War. Blackhand's daughter named Griselda fled to the mines with an ogre named Turok, and the player had to venture into the mines and slay the deserters. After the Second War, the mineshaft was left abandoned until now. Deep within their headquarters, the Defias organized their attacks against the Kingdom of Stormwind. First was to cripple their food supply. Westfall was known as the breadbasket of Stormwind's kingdom, and halting the farming of crops would deal a massive blow.
You looking at me?
Defias goons sprawled out across the golden fields and laid claim to the family farms. They'd salt the earth or outright torch the crops and halt all production. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, Stormwind's military was deployed in places all across the Eastern Kingdoms, so the citizens of Westfall were kinda just left to suffer as the Defias bullied them. Meanwhile, Van Cleef used his contacts from when he was an architect to his advantage, and hired a gaggle of goblins to craft a variety of gadgets and gizmos for the Brotherhood.
Who's ready to make some money?
But the most horrific invention the goblins crafted was the harvest golems. The Defias deployed these robots to inhabit the sacked farms to dissuade them from ever being claimed again. This proved to be effective because, by the light, the harvest golems are such a horrifying mob in WoW that nobody talks about.
Out of my field!
Target acquired. Harvesting servos engaged.
Imagine running through a cornfield while being chased by a giant scarecrow with knives for fingers.
Target destroyed.
Getting a stranglehold on the territory of Westfall was child's play. Now, the Defias could enact Phase 2 of their plan. Defias bandits sprawled out across the zones of Elwyn Forest, Duskwood, and Redridge, creating an intricate network of outposts to relay information and stir up commotion within the local settlements. At this point, the Defias Brotherhood did not just recruit stonemasons into their ranks. Bandits, cutthroats, smugglers, and any other humans who were wronged by the Kingdom of Stormwind could join their organization and work towards dismantling their opposition. But not everything went according to plan. Within the Stormwind stockades, the Alliance's most dangerous criminals have been thrown behind bars, including members of the Defias Brotherhood. One of Van Cleef's closest lieutenants was a man named Basil Thread, who had been imprisoned by the Stormwind Guards. Even inside the stockades, he was able to convert the other convicts into joining the Brotherhood. When players enter the stockades, the prisoners have erupted into a riot. What sparked this rampage is explained in the quest text for the quest, The Color of Blood. You see, because Stormwind's military was absent, they had volunteer guards for the stockades. One of these volunteer guards was a 14-year-old boy named Mac. Mac had tried to reprimand some of the prisoners for turning their wool blankets into Defias masks. In response, the prisoners killed him! Anyways, the riot within the stockades is just yet another problem for Stormwind's kingdom that has spiraled out of control.
Grab your shield! It's a riot! Back to your cell!
Let's get back to the Defias and their master plan. What is their master plan? Surely it isn't just petty thievery and harassing locals. Well, you see, Van Cleef's plan is... First, bribe the gnolls and have them attack the humans. These monstrous hyena people would cause havoc within Stormwind's kingdom and would be a great distraction from the Defias' activities. Next, take over the local mine shafts all over Elwyn Forest and then hire kobolds to mine the resources from these mine shafts. Next, use the Defias outposts scattered across the zones to make a complex trade route and smuggle steel, copper, and other materials and ship them over to the dead mines. In the dead mines, have your goblin engineers and builders construct various components and rigging for their ultimate weapon, a massive juggernaut armed with dozens of cannons. Then hire a group of bloodsail pirates to man the ship. Then sail it out into the open sea, pull it to the Stormwind harbor, and yes, reduce that damn city to rubble. Oh, just imagine the look on the nobles' faces. No, it can't be. Have I forgotten? The player characters. That's right. Van Cleef's plan was foiled how most villains' plans are foiled in the Warcraft universe. The player characters allied with the People's Militia in Westfall and stormed into the dead mines. One by one, they defeated Van Cleef's henchmen, starting with his goons, then his engineers, and finally, his crew that was second in command, like Mr. Smite, Captain Greenskin, and Cookie. Yes, the Defias has a Murloc chef named Cookie, and there's literally no lore explanation for it. But lore-wise, Mr. Smite and Cookie don't actually die. Mr. Smite returned in the Mist of Pandaria expansion as a rare mob named Yorick Sharpeye in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. We know it's him because he drops a toy that lets you turn into Mr. Smite. As for Cookie, he comes back in another iteration of the dungeon that I'll talk about later in this video. Then he plays a very minor role in the Warlords of Draenor expansion in a garrison mission, and then we find his corpse in Shadowlands, where in Maldraxxus, he was turned into an abomination, and then died again. So now he's like super dead, back to the dead mines. Despite Van Cleef having a better executed and more thought out plan than the most powerful villain in the Warcraft universe, he would ultimately meet his demise atop the Juggernaut and be defeated by the player characters.
Fantastic!
Although Van Cleef was beheaded, it would not spell the end for the Defias Brotherhood, as Van Cleef had a daughter who made it her life's mission to enact revenge for what the Kingdom of Stormwind had taken from her. Vanessa Van Cleef plotted in secret and would not reveal her true identity until the events that took place in the Cataclysm expansion. During the Cataclysm, Westfall's homeless population grew exponentially. Part of the reason for this was because the Kingdom of Stormwind was spending most of their time and gold on foreign affairs, like the previous war that took place in Northrend during the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. Disguised as a woman named Hope Saldine, Vanessa recruited a variety of henchmen to bolster the Defias once again. During the questing experience in Westfall, we discover that some mysterious woman is rallying the citizens to join the Brotherhood and take revenge against the kingdom that does not care for the best interests of its citizens. Thankfully, they all kind of forgot that it was the Defias that terrorized them in the first place, but let's just not talk about it. The questing experience in Westfall ends with Sentinel Hill being burned to the ground, and the Defias are operating in full force once again, and plan to use the same boat to destroy Stormwind once again, and you know how this story ends. Players go into the Deadmines, defeat the bosses, but only in the heroic version of the dungeon do players actually fight Vanessa.
I've been waiting a long time for this, you know. Biding my time, building my forces, studying the minds of my enemies. I was never very good at hand-to-hand combat, you know. Not like my father. But I always excelled at poisons. Especially venoms that affect the mind.
The Vanessa Van Cleef fight is one of the craziest fights that has ever been added to the game. So, it starts with her poisoning you, and then you go on a drug trip that starts with you being slowly lowered into a cauldron of molten metal, and then you have to experience the deepest, darkest fears of all the previous bosses in the dungeon, which includes fire and ice flying everywhere, shit tons of spiders, rotating electric balls, and a worgen trying to kill his own family. And then you actually fight Vanessa, and she sets the ship on fire, and you gotta swing on this rope like an action movie, and the fight finally ends with Vanessa blowing herself up.
Enough! I will not give you the pleasure. If I'm going to die, I'm taking you all with me. My fate is my own.
This is easily one of the craziest dungeon fights in the game's history, and it's a shame because since this fight is only in the heroic version of the dungeon, it hasn't been made relevant for the last decade. It's a shame because there's so much stuff like this in the game's history that is made completely irrelevant, and there's no reason for players to interact with the majority of the content in World of Warcraft. What I'm trying to say is, Blizzard, please make time walking a core part of the endgame experience. Please, thanks. Okay, rant over. But actually, Vanessa did not die at the end of Heroic Deadmines. The lore excuse being that players actually imagined her dying while experiencing their poison drug trip. Vanessa returns in the Legion expansion during the Rogue Order Hall questline, and after some shenanigans, she becomes one of your followers and joins the faction called the Uncrowned, which is basically just like the rogue version of a secret society sort of thing. And there's just one last thing in Legion that I have to mention. On the demon-infested planet of Argus, the champions of Azeroth fought alongside members of their class order halls, which, for rogues, includes the likes of Defias Thieves. For some reason, I just find this to be the funniest thing ever, because it's like, you're fighting an intergalactic war with spaceship-flying demons and light-imbued super soldiers, and then there's just like, this dude with a red bandana and a knife, and that's it. It's like poetry. What better way to illustrate the wide range of stories told in the Warcraft universe, like putting a petty thief in a dramatic space opera? Back to Westfall. In the book Exploring Azeroth Eastern Kingdoms, it's revealed that the remaining members of the Defias Brotherhood have kind of just been absorbed into the Uncrowned with Vanessa, and are no longer a threat in Westfall. As for the Deadmines, it now suffers the horrible fate of being a pet battle dungeon. Ugh. Oh, the humanity. So, did the Defias Brotherhood do nothing wrong? Well, maybe. Perhaps terrorizing hundreds of innocent civilians in your personal mission for revenge is not the most morally right thing to do. But nevertheless, we can all sympathize with the motivations of the Defias Brotherhood, and appreciate how one of the first stories told to most players in World of Warcraft has stood the test of time as a brilliantly crafted tale.
In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you're under arrest. The Senate will decide your fate.
People move ahead, but then they get afraid, and then they stop moving ahead. And so you're screwed no matter what you do.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. I'm really glad to see you today, and hopefully today will be the day. Earn your subscription. There's a button down below. I know it's a pain in the rear if you have to create an account, but I would so greatly appreciate it. Now, the news around Steven Crowder's reveal yesterday about Big Conservative Inc. has been, really hit with a deafening silence. A silence that is so deafening that a lot of people are asking, who was he talking about? Many people feel it may be the Daily Wire, but after some contemplation, it's really not that clear. There's a lot of people in the space with big money. If you just think about the type of people that are the people with the money to hire a guy like Crowder, you could even be talking about Fox News. You could be talking about the Epic Times. You could be talking about TPUSA. You could be talking about a lot of people. Now, Daily Wire has been very public about their subscription model with 900,000 paying members. Man, 900,000. I'm telling you right now, it just came in my head right now. In 2023, I'm producing a show. I'm just going to do it. By the end of the month, I'll have it arranged. That's it. That's it. Like, there's no way I'm missing out on this. Like, there's no way. 900,000 people are paying for Daily Wire articles and the occasional documentary. Are you crazy? Anyway, but we don't really know that it is or who it isn't. And I think it's kind of better that way, because I would not be surprised if this contract, is the same everywhere. And, for example, if you look at Ben Shapiro's latest video, there's a lot of people. Deafening silence is a cliche because it's so common. Eagerly awaiting Daily Wire to address the Crowder video and why Klavan named Jeremy Boring the God King. You see, a lot of people if Daily Wire is part of what Crowder is talking about, that sucks. If not, address it and support Crowder. That feels like what you would do, right? Like I did, right? Obviously, I'm not part of Big Con. I don't have money to be paying people or to hire Steven Crowder. But it seems like it's not necessarily the fact that, may or may not be them. It's stuff like this. For example, Jordan B. Peterson tweeting out Steven Crowder on the hypocrisy of conservative legacy media, right? You see this reply. King Doggo Good Boy. How long till Daily Wire has Jordan B. Peterson take it down? And it is gone. You see, somebody said the contract talks about relinquishing control of social media. They probably won't even need to ask, just log in and delete it themselves. Well, LOL, it's gone. So you had Jordan Peterson, again, a Daily Wire employee, by the way, who, look, this is probably worse. The idea that having, a major, where's the support for Crowder? Tim Pool did. Tim Pool supported him, covered it on his show. I know some people said he tweeted out the video and then deleted it. I don't know. Tim still left his comment on the video and he covered it on his show. So that's definitely good enough for me. So why is there not articles everywhere about this? Why is there not massive levels of support from, certainly the viewers are supporting. I've seen by the way, I see all you new Crowder viewers or viewers of Crowder that have come over to my channel. Really happy to have you here. Have you subscribed yet? But it's really interesting. Yeah, shout out to King Doggo Good Boy on Twitter, IP Junkie, for getting the receipts here. And then you even have Sour Patch Lids. Remind me of this in 2 weeks. Because, sure enough, Jordan B. Peterson deleted. Now, why would Jordan B. Peterson delete that tweet? Leave a like on the video if your almonds are activated. Was there a single tweet from Ben Shapiro?
G.
1 G. 700.
C.
Yeah, there are 2 C's. Well. Wow. Okay.
Nice solve.
Oh, well, that'd be a good idea, yeah.
Mythological hero Achilles.
We can't accept that.
Okay.
Shelby.
I'll solve.
Yeah.
Mythological hero Achilles.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, boy. Well, boy, when it comes to names, I think we have to just go with the name. And even though the letters are up there, because you have
Spin, Pat.
You looking at Mark? Starting to get bed sores? I'm so done with today. Imagine going to work and it's like nothing to do. It's like the opposite. You go to work and you have to work your ass off. Done. 7 hours to kill. It's like torment in a way. Kind of like a really shitty thing to be worried about. What the heck is all this? What the heck? What the heck is this? This sounds like Philippines. All the way from the Philippines? This thing. Coated in sugar. nasirupo na ni sa ating interview after nga.